Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and this is going to be an instructional video on how to use the max strength training template. So we can see here that there are a list of tabs at the bottom of the sheet, and the first one says Start Here. So on this Start Here tab, we can see a link to a video, which is the video that you're watching right now. So if you ever need to refer back to anything, you can always watch this video. The second thing is we have a table, which is a step-by-step guide on how to use this product. So we're now going to go through these steps in order to make sure you understand how to use this program. So step 1 is to select the primary lift on the training program. So if we go to the second tab here that says weeks 1 to 4, we can see here that there are 2 days and there is a primary lift and 2 accessory lifts on each day. So we need to select the primary lift. The primary lift is going to be our main strength lift that we want to peak by the end of the 16 weeks. So if we click on the cell, we can see that there is an arrow on the right hand side. If we click that arrow, there'll be a drop down menu and a list of exercises that you can select, which you can't see on this recording. However, these exercises can be seen on this tab here that says exercises. We have a list for the primary lifts and for the accessory lifts. If there's an exercise you want to select that's not on this list already, you can type it here where it says other. So for example, if we type exercise 1 as an example, and we go back to that drop down menu, at the bottom it says exercise 1, which you can't see, but if I click it, it should pop up. So whatever exercise we click, that will automatically be filled out for day 2 and also for day 1 and 2 for the rest of the program as well. That's because we want to keep the exercise the same so that we can actually peak this one given exercise. The next step now is to select the accessory lifts on the training program. So we have 2 accessory lifts on each day, and we want to choose these to be using the same muscle groups as the primary exercise in order to get some additional hypertrophy. So if we change this primary lift to something that we can work with, for example, we're going to choose the back squat. Our accessory lifts want to be using the same muscles as the back squat. So for this example, I might choose the leg press for the first one and walking lunges for the second accessory. On day 2, we can either choose the same accessories as day 1 or we can slightly vary them. So for example, we're going to choose the leg press again, but for the second accessory lift, this time we're going to choose the back extension for a bit more spinal erector and glute development. We can see here that the accessory lifts are not automatically filled out, which means you have to fill them out yourself in each block. I'd recommend to keep the same accessories primarily for the entire program, or maybe vary 1 or 2 of them if you're not finding that they're that useful. Once again, you can choose your own accessory lifts if they're not on this list by typing it where it says other. Step 3 is to understand the RPE system. Now this is important because the program follows an RPE based model. So in this tab that says Understanding RPE, we have a table of what RPE means, and then also a video link here that might help you understand the RPE system a bit more, in more detail. So make sure you have a good understanding of the RPE system before starting the program. And the last step is to complete the training program. Let's briefly go through the program so you know what you're expecting. So for weeks 1 to 4, we've already chosen the exercises we want to do. Now we just need to follow the sets, the rep range, and the RPE. So for week 1, we can see we have a rep range, not a specific rep target, and the load is not filled out or the reps aren't filled out. So what we need to do is we need to essentially select a load that's going to correspond to this rep range at this RPE. So for example, a load of 100 kilos might be appropriate for this trainee, that they get between the 8 to 10 reps at an RPE of 6. So for example, at 100 kilos, we might have done 9 reps on the first set and 8 reps on the second set at this RPE. So what we can see here is that the load has now automatically been filled out for the rest of this 4 weeks, and the progression is now based on the number of sets and also the RPE. So we can see that the number of sets increases and also the RPE increases over time. So now for week 2, we simply need to follow the number of sets, the load, and the RPE, and just write down how many reps were performed for each set. So for example, if we need to do 3 sets at 100 kilos with an RPE of 6, we might do 9 reps on the first set, 8 reps on the second, and 7 reps on the third set. We then do the same thing for week 3, now at an RPE of 7, which probably should be more reps on average. And we follow exactly the same model for day 2. The only difference is that the rep ranges are slightly different. And the accessory lifts have the exact same model as well. In the next 4 weeks, we again need to fill out the accessory lifts and do exactly the same thing as before. The only thing that's different in these 4 weeks is the rep ranges, which means the loads used should be slightly heavier. Once we fill out a load, let's say 110 kilos for example, once again, the load will be automatically filled out for the rest of the 4 weeks. For weeks 9 to 12, the progression is slightly different here. Once again, we want to do the same thing in the first week. We want to fill out the load with the given RPE that corresponds roughly to this rep range. The rep ranges are lower here again, but now the progression is on load increases rather than on RPE increases. So we can see for the primary exercise, the RPE actually stays the same the entire block, but the load will increase. So for example, if we use 120 kilos for this first week here, we can see that the load has automatically increased over the weeks. So all we need to do is fill out the number of reps that we perform for each set. So for example, this might be 6 reps that corresponds to this rep range. On this day, we might have done 5 reps on the first set and 4 reps on the second set, and so on. And throughout the 4 weeks, the number of reps you perform will likely decrease slightly, since the load is increasing. The same method of progression follows for day 2 for the primary lift, except the rep range again is slightly lower. For the accessory lifts, the model of progression is exactly the same as previously. And the last 4 weeks now follows again a different model of progression. So rather than having a rep range, we simply have a hard number of reps we want to perform at a given RPE. So we want to do 1 set of 3 at an RPE of 7. So 3 reps at an RPE of 7 may be 125 kilos for this trainee as an example. Now the model of progression here is that the reps and sets stay the same, but now the RPE increases. So really we should be using a heavier load each week. The same method of progression applies for day 2 for the primary exercise, and the accessory lifts again follow the same model of progression as before. However, week 16 is a taper, which means that the volume is reduced, and this day 2 of week 16 is when we are actually peaking. So here we want to go for our absolute 1 rep max for the last session of the program. And lastly, we also have a tab here that says more from Flow High Performance. And these are just some links to our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels, and also a link here to our website where you can find more products.